Hello and welcome to Upper Pen. My name is Dakota, and today I'm talking with Amalie Howard about her latest book, The Starlight Heir. Thank you so much for being here, Amalie.
Thank you so much for having me, Dakota. I'm excited to talk about it.
This is not your first romantasy book, as I understand it.
It's actually my first adult fantasy. I started out in science fiction and fantasy way back when. I feel like so old when I say this, but like my first book was 2011. So
Oh.
I've been in these trenches a very long time.
Um, can you tell people what The Starlight Heir is generally about?
Oh, sure. So the Starlight Heir is a spicy romantasy inspired by Persian and Indian mythology about a beautiful bladesmith who is unexpectedly summoned to the royal palace with other eligible ladies to compete for the crown prince's hand. Only it's a thinly disguised ruse to find the prophesized star keeper, who has the magic of the stars in her blood. Um, so in a realm where magic is dying, her power, of course, is coveted by the crown prince, and she becomes embroiled in a huge power struggle involving the prophecy and the resurrection of an old, ruthless god. She ends up fleeing the palace with none other than the prince's illegitimate brother, who has secrets of his own. But when her terrifying power starts to manifest, he turns out to be the only one that she can trust. Dun dun dun.
So that's
Shenanigans
quite.
ensue.
It's
Okay.
such an intense story right from the start too, because it feels like I don't know, there's this like I don't want to say secret at the beginning that you're trying to like what is going on? How does the magic system work?
Yeah.
And Sura is a really cool character because she's actually like a blacksmith and she's making weapons, but she's using jada. Is that how you say it?
Jadu. Yeah, like
Jadu.
Jadu. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's like star or
So it's
magic.
like remnants of like magic, but it's in pockets in the realm that it's like crystals. And the king, of course, the crown, they want to keep control of all these mines, the last remnants of magic in the realm. So she uses these little pieces that are like weighed and they're kept under like heavy guard to imbue them into the weapons that she forges. And only a few people can actually forge the weapons with the magic crystals, and then it gives them certain elemental powers. So you can have like if it's forged with an ice rune, for example, the sword has ice powers. So I think that's kind of cool.
I think it's really wonderful because it kind of grounds the magic system a little bit right from the start. And then we hear about the Magi, right? So these were
Mm-hmm.
people who used to have magic.
Yep.
Um, and so that's the beginning.
Yeah, so way back when they had magic, and the thing with stuff like magic is like someone always wants to control it, to weaponize it, to take power, lands, conquer with it. So they went extinct when king who kind of declared himself a god king said, "All the magic is mine," and then it just dried up from the land because it's a natural phenomenon. I like the idea of magic being like a fifth element. I think that's really cool, like ether, the universe, space, which in Hindi it's called akasha. So like that's really cool.
I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Um, the book does feel very rich with mythology because you do start out with the origin myth of the magic, which is fun because you have two gods. One is death and one is um,
Creation.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, so it's very fun because you do start out grounding us very well. Um, and then of course we get to the palace and meet a very cheeky young man,
My
Roshan.
tree trimmer. Yeah.
Um, so tell me a little bit about Roshan. He's the illegitimate son, right?
Yes. So I don't want to give away any spoilers, but he's just, yeah, mischievous. Not a lot of people know of him. They just know that he's the second son. And his father, he has a good relationship with his father, the king, who is unfortunately quite sick. So the Prince Regent, the crown prince, is his older half brother. And he's the one who's looking for the Star Keeper, along with his very questionable mother. But Roshan is like really, he has his own secrets. He's trying to, do what he needs to do to save his people because he is very conscious of, the power that he holds as a prince, even though he's an illegitimate prince. But he's also in the running for the throne. So he's a threat to the crown prince as well. And while he has his father's protection, the crown prince and the queen can't do anything to him. So imagine what happens if something happens to the king.
Yeah, so nothing bad happens to the king at all. No,
No, no,
no.
totally fine.
Um, so this is a pretty classic plot, right? So evil brother prince, and then you have the dashing illegitimate son.
Yeah. I
So
really wanted to play with the like morally gray trope, but like people expect the crown prince to be the lead, and I wanted it to
uh,
not be him. I wanted it to be someone else who was also morally gray, but like a morally gray cinnamon roll. Oh my God.
so I didn't even get that he was morally gray until like a third of the way through the book, and I'm like, wait, you did a bamboozle.
The Hans of the Southern Isles.
So I think you definitely played his character very close to the vest for quite a while there.
Yeah. No, and I wanted that. I wanted him to be like this thoughtful, you meet him and he's this thoughtful, amazing guy who's generous with, wanting to help the stranger that he's met. Obviously, there's a little bit of attraction between him and Sura from the start because, you got to have a little bit of sparks for something to grow into giant fire. Chapter 17, that's all I have to say about that. And but also like the morally gray piece comes with he can be quite ruthless in terms of achieving his own goals. And that's what I liked interweaving with the cinnamon roll character.
Yeah.
And you kind of like ask yourself, I think, with his journey, which one's going to win out, you know?
You have me going still. I finished book one and I'm still like, oh God, this could go so many ways.
So many ways, so many
Power
ways.
corrupts, right? Absolute.
Yep.
So
Oh, yeah.
there's so much room for you to play in book two. So I'm excited for when that gets going. But this one has just come out, so don't
Mhm.
nobody jump the gun yet.
Yeah, I will say that it is written, so don't worry. It's already been turned in, and I'm really excited about it. I'm really excited about it because I'm going to show you the sticker, which you probably had, but like it says, what does it say?
Oh,
It says, why not both? Oh,
that explains, yeah, that does. That is such a like popular trope right now too. I didn't used to see it, and now I think it feels like it's slowly gaining more traction. So,
yeah. I feel like it's just another emphasis to love is so fluid, and
yeah.
it's like, relationships are just they're open. It can be anything, and love can take like any form,
Yeah.
and any number of people. I mean, I just anyway, I don't want to give away too much, but yeah,
It's-
I said what I said.
there's too many things.
Too many.
Um, I will say I think it's interesting how you framed the narrative primarily from Sura's point of view. But you have maybe every 10 chapters or so, you have
Mm-hmm.
someone else's point of view. And it's really short and it's usually just peeking at whatever she's doing. So it's like it's such a good little like peek outside of her person,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm. It was like a tease. I mean, the God of Night, first of all, in the beginning, with the setup that you talked about, you have these gods. Surely there's going to have to be some god or god descendant playing in this. And we have Vina, and she is kind of like a meddler, right? She's one of the four royal stars, and they're supposed to be guardians of humanity. And then, of course, you have this mysterious god that appears. I really wanted to play also, like, I'm a trope. I love tropes, but I also wanted to play with the chosen one trope and the fated mate trope. And what would happen if those two, kind of came into this?
Yeah. So I do really love that there's this tension throughout at least the last two-thirds of the book, that you really get this tension building because Roshan and Sura are really connecting at this point.
Yeah,
Um, and I was like, oh gosh, I don't know how this is gonna work.
right. And you have this other person who is like inserting himself. And you
Yeah.
can see, like, I was just really hopeful that his, frustration and anger and just desire and his possessiveness would come through. So you're like, who is this dude? And like, why is he like, getting in our like sweet romance that's happening here?
I do like that you introduced him in book one, though, and it's not like a complete surprise for
Yeah,
book two.
yeah.
Um,
No,
that's
I definitely
happened.
wanted to do that. Yeah.
Um, and you also get this teasing of fated mates with a creature that the crown prince cruelly has tied up. And I think it's really
Hmm.
interesting because she
Yes.
connects with that creature almost
Yeah.
immediately. Um,
I love that you just brought that up because actually I think I'd forgotten that I said that the Hawkeyes, they have their own mates, like, and they mate for life. So yeah, I like that.
I like
I
so it
forgot
just
that. It's cool.
pulled it together so well. Look, you did stuff you forgot about.
Yeah,
I imagine
I
it's been
did.
a while since you wrote this.
Yeah, I did. Yep, yep. And I'm like, now I'm like, oh my gosh, I gotta go back. I have it too. See, I have it in my hand. And I'm like, let me go over to my glossary, which I've gotten like, you know, compliments on. And I think a glossary is actually always really good. Okay, I called it a Dahak. It's not Dahak. Dahak is the name of the rebel group. It's Azdaha.
Yes, yeah.
Azdaha. Yeah.
Yes.
So it's pretty much like a gigantic snake-like winged wyvern, basically. And the thing about that, I love that in different cultures, everybody loves dragons, they love wyverns. They're in every
Yeah.
culture.
But
And
they're
they're
also they mean so many different things to people. Like,
exactly.
yeah.
I was just gonna say they can be evil, they can
Yeah.
be benevolent. I mean, Sura's magic manifests as a simorg, which is like it's very similar to a phoenix. It's a benevolent being, very protective, very wise, and you know, I think in book two, it's going to have more of a personality because she is now in book one learning what this is, right? What this part of her is.
Yeah. So at first, her power awakens pretty violently. That's part of the main plot of the first third-ish, right? Which I don't want to give away too much, but it's so difficult to talk about. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but think about it, right? Like you always hear about like if your baby, with moms that and like a car, they can lift a car in moments of, huge
yeah.
stress and tension. And I wanted it to be like that, where she's so panicked and afraid for her life that this thing inside of her kind of explodes into being. And she's also really afraid of it because how do you control that? How do you control like a massive exploding fire, you know?
Yeah. And it's not just that it's fire. These people are dust in
Yeah.
seconds.
It vaporizes them. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, and it's truly horrifying the first time the power comes out. And I think it's so wonderful. Um, it's like a good moment for it to come out.
Thanks. No, yeah, yeah. I hope so because it's hard sometimes when you're creating like, heroes and villains. We're not wholly always one or the
Yeah.
other. There's like shades of gray in both of those. So even with her, when she's questioning, oh my gosh, am I like a terrible person? Because she's used this power to harm instead of to, safeguard or protect. But it's also a defensive power because they were going to hurt her. So
That's where her cinnamon roll protects her
I
herself.
I know. Yes, exactly.
She needs an outside cinnamon roll.
I mean, we all need a cinnamon roll. Delicious.
Um, in book two, um, is Sura's dad and her aunt in it more, or are they more gone at this point?
They're in it.
Oh my God, I love her
Yep.
aunt so much.
Yeah, yeah, she's always going to be like this comfort figure for her, right? And obviously this um like a another version of her mom, basically a connection to her own maternal sort of heritage, I guess.
Okay. I just want to know that some of these side characters are coming back.
Oh, they're coming back. And new ones. And new
Ah,
ones.
good,
Hmm.
good.
And lots more of Mr. Mysterious third presence.
Does the structure shift a little bit then? Does it take on more of an equal point of view?
It shifts. You see a lot of him.
Okay.
And I don't want to give away too much what
Yeah, yeah.
happens, but it's a whole, the world is very different.
Oh, okay.
If you look at the map, you'll be able to understand why the world is very different. So go study the map. This is the map here. I'll hold it up, right? Study the map, and you'll see there's two different.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm picking up what you're putting down.
All right, all right. Yeah, try to be like sneaky, but not too sneaky. So you're like, what is she saying?
I'm like, do I remember a map? Did I just skip it? I might have just skipped it.
Yeah, it's in the front, I think, like right after the like signature, like right before where it says the houses, what the houses
Oh,
are.
yeah.
So it's like there.
Yep.
Yeah.
I did skip it. I never want to know
I
about the houses at first. So I'm like, oh, go buy all this stuff.
I love like a good map because sometimes, I want to see where things are. And if there's like like a canyon, I want to envision it. If there's like a battle happening, like I want to see it in my head. And it was really cool because I actually drew that map.
What? Like by
Yeah.
hand?
But in with colored pencils, I kid you not.
Dang.
Yeah. So when I sent it to my publisher, they sent it to the cartographer and then they did the fancy version. Mine has colored pencils on it. Like,
That should be on your website.
yeah.
Gosh.
I think we did like during release week, we did a comparison of the original map that I drew and then their fancy map. So that was cool.
That's fun. I love it.
Yeah.
Um, where was I headed?
I know. See, this is what I do. Like it's called misdirection. I'm like, book two, what? Let's go here.
Well, I'm also trying to avoid like so many plot points that happen very early because I like the surprise of them and how they're revealed. So I tend to just bounce
I love
around.
that. It's actually there's a lot. I think, thank you for doing that because I think that the book is so packed with different things. And also what I wanted to do as an author with book two, I wanted when you read a book and you have a book two, you can read book two and go back to see all the Easter eggs that you missed in book one. I love that. So there's a few. So yeah,
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll have to read it again right before I read book two. So I remember
yeah.
everything.
Or read book two and go back and read book one and be like, oh my God, that foreshadowing, I should have seen it or something.
Um, why is my brain blinking?
Because you're thinking of this handsome cinnamon roll Morley Gray dude.
I am though. He sounds so adorable.
Yeah. I mean, adorable, and you can climb him like a tree. Like, what's not to love? Did you see the
Um,
art? It was so cool of the art for this. I don't
I
know if
did
that's the thing we
not.
talk about, but it's like this is what it looks like. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I like my little shadow daddy god over there, and then Roshan is like just so handsome. And his face is just so sweet. He's like, I'll take care of you. But first I must get my own goals out of the way.
Yes. So I do love that everybody is very much not all good, not all bad. There's mostly good, it feels like, and very bad.
Yeah.
But um, there's ambiguity. So I do love that. Yeah.
Me too. That's one of my favorite things about like complex characters because it just makes you question all the time what their motivations are.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I'm a fan of like Megamind. Come on. The guy is so misunderstood, but I just want to be evil so bad, but he's just not, you know?
He tries though, he
Yeah,
tries. Um,
exactly.
so if I had the power to incinerate someone and I had just been through a whole lot of things, I might be
Mhm.
tempted to use that. So like she's a stronger person than me.
Yeah, I mean, no, seriously, right? Think about it. Like even like to get stuff, right? I can't even remember what the movie was. It was one of Hayden Christensen, I think, was in it. It's called Jumper. It's like
Oh
older,
yeah.
but like he had this power, and then all of a sudden he started stealing a little bit of things at a time, and then it bigger and bigger, it became bigger and bigger, and it's like, how do you? I mean, he's stealing.
Yeah.
He's not going to put that back, but it's a power that he abuses. So it's like, yeah, I know exactly what you mean.
I would definitely abuse it immediately, probably.
Right? I know it burns stuff down. Like, yeah, I don't like that mountain. It's going. Like,
Um, do you have a local bookstore where people can buy signed copies?
yep, I do. It's called Old Firehouse Books. I have a link in my Linktree on socials that connects you to them. I just signed actually a giant stack on Monday of books there, and I just if the people want it personalized or like with a doodle or a quote, I'll just run down and do it for them, and then they'll ship it out anywhere in the U.S. So yeah, they've
Perfect.
been pretty great.
Aw. Are you working on anything else right now?
Oh yes, I am. So I'm excited to actually get edits back on book two because I just want to go back into this world. And I'm really excited for everyone. I know like I'm a huge Tolkien girly, so like I love deep, complex, rich world building. But I also don't want it to be too much.
Yeah.
So a lot of some of the feedback that I got was that the world building was immersive but easy to understand, which is kind of like you want that sweet spot in the middle. But the world building in book two, it's not the same. So I'll just say that
Does it ramp
because
up?
a lot,
Okay.
yes. It's a different realm. Let's just put that. Let's just say that and leave it at that. Remember,
Perfect.
I was pointing. I was like, here, this, this, right? Yeah. Um, yeah. So I mean, I'm excited about like exploring that. And then I'm actually on deadline for book three in the Diamond series, which is so it's the first book was Queen Bee. It's a YA Bridgerton-esque teen book. The first book was based on the Count of Monte Cristo. So lots of revenge. And then the second book was, which comes out April 1st, is based on Dead Poet Society. So girl gangs, banned books. Really exciting. And then I'm writing the third book right now, which is She's the Man with Mathematics instead of soccer. So, because women back then weren't allowed to go to university, so she disguises herself as her cousin. So it's just it's exciting to write, kind of tough to like jump from one world to the next. But the thing I love about being a historical romance writer is that you already have that language. Even though I do think in romantasy I like seeing a little bit more of the modern side because I want that rom-commy type of feel. in my romantasy. And I know there's a lot of discourse on romantasy versus like fantasy and fantasy romance and all this stuff, but
I don't know, if we pick hairs too much, like you're gonna end up with a mess, is how I feel.
exactly. And everybody, I think as long as you vibe with the book, and I love this word. I in 2025, I was like, my whole year is just gonna be vibes. It's just what I like, and I'm gonna like what I like, and that's it, in terms of like reading and consuming media and stuff.
One of the things that I found very interesting about the Starlight Heir is actually the language that you're using, because I go into fantasy thinking I'm going to hear antiquated language. I'm going to hear types of
Here is thine stars.
yeah,
Yeah.
kind of.
Yeah.
And this used much more modern language to describe a lot of things, which I thought was so very helpful, especially for people who might not be into fantasy yet.
Yeah.
So you made it so accessible.
Thank you. Thank you. I was hoping to do that. I know some diehard fantasy readers will be like, oh, it was a little too modern, but I don't use slang. I don't say like,
Yeah.
oh my God, there's none of that. Like, or like, obvious contemporary slang. I don't use stuff like that. I mean, as a historical writer, I know how to use language to convey stuff because even some people who are like, the old school historical romance writers will read like one of my historical rom-coms and say, oh, it's so modern, but it's actually not. I check every single word in etymology.com that is like to make sure that it was period appropriate. But
I
sometimes, it's linguistics, right? You put two words together and people are like, that's contemporary, but it's not. It's just two separate words, you know?
I also think people don't fully understand when words were initially
Oh, for
uh
sure. Especially bad words, especially the bad words. Because they're like, oh, that didn't exist. I'm like, ma'am, this existed in the 12th century.
Ooh, we can point this almost to the person, I feel like.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I do feel like it's modern in tone, but it didn't feel overwhelming for sure. And that's got to be a hard line to straddle. But maybe because you are a historical romance writer, it wasn't as difficult for you.
It wasn't as difficult. And like I said before, like I love heavy fantasy. That's what I grew up reading. I mean, I think I read Lord of the Rings when I was 12. So like super young. I loved like Mercedes Lackey growing up, like stuff like that. Like, all those like major like fantasy books. And they didn't really have romantic subplots. The thing I love about romantasy, and I actually think it's like its own subgenre of fantasy and even of fantasy romance, is that it's romance heavy. It has a little bit more modern language. You look at like Jennifer Armentrout, hers has, contemporary sounding language. I like that. I like being able to immerse myself in something because I think what it is, you used the word before, accessibility.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to insert yourself into this kind of fantasy, I
Well,
think, than,
so I feel like if I'm reading like uh R.A. Salvatore, right? Or if I'm reading Tolkien, if I'm reading T.A. White, I
mhm.
have to work so hard for every page that I get. And so my reading speed goes way down, and then I feel discouraged, even though I've read these books so many times.
Yeah.
So yeah, I
Yeah.
think
I
that's
mean,
why.
it's a different type of experience. Doesn't
Yeah.
make anyone lesser than the other. I remember like even the Game of Thrones books, I read the first four in a week. Four in a week. I'm not a
Oh,
fast reader, but like that stuff is like your brain hurts because your
yes.
brain, I think, might be swelling trying to like, you know, picture all this information.
Well, you also have to learn to read those types of books, which can sometimes be difficult for people who are not readers or they didn't grow up, you know, in a library every single day.
Well,
So,
that's what I love about like this subgenre. I just think it's just such a like it's an entry point, and I love that for more readers to love it. And Of course, Fourth Wing is the one that everybody knows about because it was just such an entry, like, hey, here's your entry point into like readable, compulsively readable fantasy.
I think Lore of the Wilds from last year was very similar
Yeah,
too. It didn't gain as much traction, probably because there
yeah,
wasn't any dragons, but
yeah. I mean, I would love for more BIPOC books and books that feature, other cultures, books written by authors of color. I would love for those fantasy books to get, you know, more traction, to get more visibility, more exposure. And, of course, this comes down to, as, we've said, most people have said a lot, is to the consumer. You have to buy it. So, and I hope to see more of it because it's really interesting. Like Misha J. Tooley, like her fantasy series is amazing.
yes, yes. Tasha Suri is
Yep.
wonderful.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many people out there, and I feel like they
Yeah.
don't get enough recognition.
Yeah.
So, um, well, do you have any websites or any social media?
Yep. I'm just AmalieHoward.com, and I'm on most social media as Amalie Howard or Amalie Howard author on TikTok. But I lost TikTok because I upgraded something on my phone and I was like, it said download, and then I was like, it's gone. I mean, I don't really have a huge TikTok presence. I love Instagram better. So I wasn't too devastated. But now I have to go look up stuff on my computer and I'm like, oh, I'll just repost. Repost.
I'm such an old type of internet person. I know I need to do TikTok, right? It's these bite-sized reaches a lot of people very quickly. And I just have a difficult time with it.
Yeah. I don't like putting my face out. I don't mind doing my books and art and really cool things, but like I think you have to have a certain personality to be like, on videos constantly. Like my daughter's a YouTuber and I said, "Will you ever use TikTok?" And she's 15. But she's like, "No." She's like, "I like CapCut, so I miss that." But, she's a YouTuber, just
Well,
started doing Instagram.
they have shorts now on YouTube, and it's the same kind of vibe. It's just not as widespread, I think, you know.
Yeah.
But well, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This felt like I was in my living room chatting with a buddy. It was awesome.
That's what I aim for. I just want it to be a normal chat, but I do love to talk about literature, so it has to be about literature.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Well, thank you so
Well,
much again for being here.
thank you, Dakota. Appreciate it.
And if anybody out there hasn't read The Starlight Heir yet, it is out on shelves. It is gorgeous. Mine started to leave little glitters on my fingers because I was holding the book so much.
Oh, that's awesome.
And I was like, oh, I'm taking it with me. So,
Is this video like, are you showing a video or no? Or is
yes.
it just audio?
Nope,
Yeah,
it's
see
video.
this is the Fairy Loot naked cover. So it comes with another cover. That's the jacket. I took it off, but it's a hardcover and it's got these sprayed edges with the simmer. But I love this, and it goes into like pink foil, but it's so beautiful. Yeah, this book, I really hope people enjoy it and, pick it up for a pretty cover with pretty insides.
Well, it's so good. And I really do think people will pick it up, especially with that cover. Holy cramoly.
I love it. I love it. It's one of those things that I just stare at like every time I see it.
I So the fairy loot stuff is so beautiful, but it sells out so fast.
Yeah.
And then I get so frustrated.
Yeah, I know. This is on the end papers of this is awesome. So I'll show you what Roshan and Sura look like. I mean, the artist is just chef's kiss level talented. Like, oh, yeah. It's a beautiful, beautiful edition. I felt very lucky that they did it.
Well, I have to go see if they still have some on the website.
Yeah, I hope so. My brother's like, give me one. I'm like, no,
You buy it.
I know. Go find it yourself, buddy.
Um, so Starlight Heir, Amalie Howard, thank you. And
Thank you so much.
everyone out there, have a wonderful day and enjoy your next read. Bye.